It is November 1532 in the high valley of Cajamarca. The air is thin, the ground hard-packed dirt and stone. A large crowd fills the square, men in bright clothing standing shoulder to shoulder. Some carrying clubs and slings, others holding standards. They wait for their ruler. Atahualpa enters with a grand entourage and guards. He has just won a brutal civil war that tore through the empire's leadership. He is confident and expects a meeting, a display of power, and an exchange of words and gifts. Hidden around the plaza are Spanish soldiers led by Francisco Pizarro. They possess steel weapons, firearms, and horses. A signal is given. A cannon fires. Smoke rolls across the square. Horses surge forward. The crowd panics and collapses in chaos. Swords strike at close range. Atahualpa is seized in the crush, is pulled from his litter and dragged into a nearby building. The Spanish close the doors and guard him heavily. In a single afternoon, a ruler at the center of a vast empire is taken alive by a small force that had crossed an ocean and climbed into the Andes. The capture at Cajamarca becomes powerful leverage. It turns into a ransom demand, orders sent to distant towns, and a wave of fear that spreads through a government built around one central figure. From this moment, the empire that had expanded so rapidly begins to unravel. Later, Inca rulers claimed a divine origin far from their capital at Cusco. According to priests and court historians, the founders emerged at Lake Titicaca, sent by a divine power with a sacred mission to bring order to the world. They carried holy objects and walked until the land gave them a sign. These stories served a clear political purpose. They gave the ruling family an ancient and sacred pedigree, framing conquest as a divine duty. In reality, the early period was smaller and harsher. In the high valleys of what is now Peru, communities lived in tight kin groups, working steep fields with terraces and irrigation channels. They stored potatoes and maize, raised llamas and alpacas, and traded goods over long distances. Raids and local wars were common. In the Cusco Valley, a small ruling group gradually rose among many rivals. They formed alliances through marriage, demanded labor and goods, built ritual spaces, and held feasts to strengthen loyalty. Over generations, they transformed the valley into a secure base of power. The true turning point came in the 15th century during a severe crisis. Enemies pressed in, threatening to overrun Cusco itself. From this desperate conflict emerged a leader remembered as Pachacati. Tradition credits him with a decisive defense of the capital and a major political reorganization that followed. After this victory, the Inca state changed in scale and ambition. The capital was rebuilt with magnificent stonework that signaled permanence. The rulers expanded the cult of the sun and tied political loyalty to ritual obligations. Conquest followed a clear pattern. It usually began with diplomacy. Envoys offered terms. Local leaders could keep their status if they accepted the Inca ruler as superior, paid tribute, and supplied labor. Refusal brought the army. Inca forces moved on foot, armed with slings, clubs, spears, and axes, protected by quilted armor. When entering a new region, they targeted the local political center, took hostages, demanded submission, and replaced resistant leaders with cooperative ones. The state offered real benefits that made submission attractive. It built the extraordinary Capac-owned road network with stone stairs, rope bridges, way stations, and storehouses. Relay runners carried messages using spoken words and knotted cords called quipus. Large public feasts provided food, chicha beer, and gifts to local elites. The empire redistributed stored food and cloth during shortages and campaigns. The system rested on organized labor. Households owed work rotations to the state. Men built terraces, dug canals, quarried stone, served in armies, and tended royal herds. In return, the state provided security and redistributed resources. The empire called itself Tawantinsuyo, the four parts together. From Cusco, the world was divided into four quarters radiating outward, with the capital at the sacred center. Expansion accelerated under leaders like Topa, Inca, Yupanqui. The Inca pushed into richer coastal territories. The greatest prize was the powerful kingdom centered at Chanchan on the north coast. Conquering it brought skilled engineers, workshops, and advanced administrative knowledge. Control required constant effort. The Inca used local rulers as intermediaries and practiced resettlement, moving groups of people to strategic areas to break potential rebellions, Religious policy blended tolerance and control. They demanded recognition of the sun god and the sacred status of the ruler, installing shrines and moving sacred objects to Cusco as political hostages. Magnificent estates and ceremonial sites, including the famous Machu Picchu, were built across the highlands using directed labor. By the early 16th century, the empire stretched along most of the Andean spine, from present-day Ecuador in the north to deep into the valleys of central Chile in the south. It managed deserts, high plateaus, cloud forests, and irrigated coastal plains through roads, storehouses, local intermediaries, and military threat. The rapid rise created both great strength and dangerous fragility. A strong ruler could quickly move resources and enforce loyalty, but extreme centralization made succession extremely risky. In the mid-1520s, the ruler Huayna Capac died, likely from a wave of disease spreading through the Andes. His death triggered a fierce civil war between Huáscar, associated with the traditional Cusco court, and Atahualpa, backed by northern forces. The war devastated the army and administration. Atahualpa emerged victorious but inherited a damaged empire. It was at this vulnerable moment that Francisco Pizarro arrived. In 1532, his small force marched inland with indigenous allies. When they reached Cajamarca, they faced an emperor who had just finished his own civil war. Atahualpa came to the meeting confident, surrounded by a massive entourage. The Spanish chose the ground and launched a surprise attack from concealment, focusing on capturing the emperor. Atahualpa was held prisoner. He offered an enormous ransom of gold and silver. His subjects stripped temples and storehouses to meet the demand. The Spanish accepted the treasure, but kept Atahualpa under guard. In 1533, after a short and contested process, he was executed. The empire lost the man who had just won the Civil War and the appearance of order at the top. Spanish success exploited existing fractures. Many recently conquered provinces held grievances against Cusco. Some saw the Spanish as allies against Inca rule. The Spanish made effective use of Inca roads and storehouses. In Cusco, the Spanish installed a puppet ruler and seized estates and treasures. They fought among themselves over spoils. Inca resistance continued under leaders like Manco Inca Yupanqui. He initially cooperated but later broke with the Spanish and led a major uprising in 1536. Laying siege to Cusco, the siege failed, and Manco Inca retreated into the remote forested region of Vilcabamba, where a smaller Inca state survived for decades. In the 1570s, the Spanish launched a final campaign into Vilcabamba. The last ruler, Tupac Amaru, was captured and executed in Cusco in 1572. The last independent Inca court came to an end. The Inca Empire had risen in just a few generations through conquest, organized labor, and a highly efficient state built for movement and storage. Its fall began when leadership fractured, disease spread, and outsiders arrived at the precise moment the system was most vulnerable. Today, stone walls still stand on mountain ridges, roads still cut across steep slopes, and ancient storehouses remain perched above valleys. The empire's remarkable infrastructure survived longer than its rulers. The people who once lived under it endured even longer than the empire itself.